Hi everybody, Chris Titley here and welcome to Scoreboard.
This episode is powered by Swyftx, Australia's top-rated crypto exchange and proudly homegrown. Just like many of the athletes and business leaders we feature on Scoreboard.
Hi, it's Chris Titley here and on today's episode of Scoreboard, the podcast, I'm joined by Al Baxter. Al, thank you so much for being part of this series and great to finally have a chat.
Thanks, Chris. My pleasure. Looking forward to being on.
We're here on Monday the 11th of August, almost the end of winter, but how's your winter been, Al?
Yeah, wet. Sydney has been very wet for winter. Been busy though. We've had lots of rugby and that's been fantastic.
Yes, we've had the Lions come and go in what was a pretty interesting series on the field, but also very importantly off the field. How would you describe the series and I suppose its importance for rugby?
Yeah, look, I think the series has to be classed as a great success for Australian rugby. Look, even though we didn't win the series, apart from the first game, we played wonderfully well. We had also our provinces play wonderfully well. Someone pointed out to me during the week that in South Africa, when they played the South African provinces, their average winning margin was 40 points. The average winning margin against the Australian provinces was about 25, 27 points. So I think rugby's going well. We had fantastic crowds. I think highest record crowds. We had a great touring parties always from the Lions, and we had some amazing rugby. Those last two games or the last two tests were some of the best rugby I've seen the Wallabies play for decades, and it was so good to see.
Yeah, particularly the running style, I think, and in terms of getting it out there, a bit more free flowing. Where would you we touch on rugby for a second. Where would you describe rugby being at the moment? I suppose the last few years has probably been a little bit up and down, probably more so than down.
Yeah.
But what's the future look like for you?
Oh, definitely up. We've got a really exciting period coming up. We've had the Lions Tour success. We've got the 2027 Men's World Cup, and then we've got the 2029 Women's World Cup in Australia. So over the next 5 years, we have less than that, 4 years. We've got some brilliant rugby tournaments in town. We've got you're very right. It has been up and down. I think it was trending up under Rennie, the coach, and then unfortunately Eddie Jones did some damage. We did really poorly in the World Cup. The team was torn apart and have had to rebuild from that. But Joe Smith, who's the current coach, I think has done a great job. And as you said, the style of rugby we're playing is really great to watch. It's not just free running out the backs. For me, what's exciting is we've got some great scrummaging, but also some big bruising guys just doing some damage in the forwards. And really, you can only run free out the backs when you've got your forward pack.
Absolutely. And Al, how would you describe your own personal relationship with rugby?
Yes, well, I obviously played a long time professionally, and then I've got three boys, and my wife and I are deeply back into it because our three boys are all playing rugby. My eldest son, Finn, he's just come back from playing in the Under-20 World Championships. He was playing prop in the Aussie team, so my wife and I went and saw that, and then my other two boys also play rugby. And so, last year, I think we clocked up 101 games of rugby we saw between the three of them. So we've dived right back in. But look, loving it. It's so nice to be able to watch your kids play and watch their success and see them forge their own path.
I'm curious to know, like, in terms of the Under-20 tournament, I suppose, how the world perceives rugby in terms of the game. Is it just Australia that sort of had its ups and downs, or other regions of the world, same old, rising up?
Yeah, look, it depends entirely where you are. Japan definitely rising up. France, it's huge at the moment. So there's so much depth. There's so many people playing it. South Africa, it's huge at the moment. They've won the last two World Cups. They're number one in the world. It's really huge. England, it's been a bit up and down. It's still really big. It's still a huge sport there, but there's been some financial issues because essentially some of the clubs have been trying to pay players the same as what's been happening in France, and they just haven't been able to keep up. And then US, it's getting bigger and bigger. So there's actually more registered players in the US than Australia. It's a massive collegiate sport. Sevens is very big over there. They have a couple of sevens tournaments, but they're slated to hold the 2031 and 2033 Rugby World Cups. And so, it's building. So, look, it's around the rest of the world. It's on a much bigger upward trend than it has been in Australia. But I think the likes of the sevens tournaments have been really great in terms of non-traditional countries like Spain have been getting into it, the US, those guys are getting it. And, look, the other big one is Argentina. It's massive in Argentina at the moment. They've been really successful. They got third in the under-20s tournament. Their national team beat the Lions. There's a whole lot of good feeling in Argentina as well.
I think one of the missing pieces, I suppose, is the top-level team beating the All Blacks, and
Yes.
that feeling and how and playing against them, etc. How far do you reckon we're off from doing that?
Yeah, look, the Bledisloe Cup, I never won a Bledisloe Cup. I beat New Zealand plenty of times, but never won a Bledisloe Cup. I think I'd hope we can give it a red hot go this year. I think definitely got the team. We have, I think, our starting 15 is as good as any starting 15 anywhere in the world. I think we don't have the same depth as South Africa and New Zealand. So where we struggle is if we have a couple of injuries in key positions, we can't bring that same quality up through the ranks that they can elsewhere. So, look, I think if big Rob Valentini gets back on the field, I think if we're allowed to use Skelton, doesn't have to go back to French rugby, I think we're a good chance.
Fantastic. And Al, your journey post-rugby, do you want to talk about that and what you're up to now?
Yeah, well, look, I did an architecture degree as I was starting my rugby career, and look, it was always my passion. So I always saw myself as an architect who happened to be playing a bit of rugby and not a rugby player who also happened to be an architect. So when I got to the end of my rugby career, I was really keen to jump back into my architecture, and I did just that and started working full-time pretty much from the moment I announced my retirement, and have been working ever since. I now work for a firm called Populous, and we do stadiums, arenas, and high-performance buildings around the world, as well as a couple of other things, but that's the primary driver of what we do. So I am very, very lucky that I get to now do the designs of the places which I love playing in. And it's a fantastic job. So we did Suncorp, did Combank Stadium, the one which is in Penrith. We're doing the new one in Christchurch. We're doing the Japanese National Rugby Stadium. We're doing Twickenham in London. So all really exciting projects that I'm lucky enough to be able to get to be a part of.
Couple of questions on that. In terms of your lessons that you learnt from sport in business, the correlation?
Oh, look, massive one, hard work, discipline and teamwork. Three things that work just as well in the corporate world as they do on the field. I think teamwork is a huge one, understanding that the team is bigger than the self, that you have roles and responsibilities in that team, and you've got to be accountable for those roles and responsibilities, but also trust those around you to do their roles. And the most successful teams, be it in the corporate world or on the field, are those where that's really successful. And then hard work and discipline's another big one. It's just getting shit done in many ways. So, hey, if you say you'll do something, then you do it. And even if it takes a bit of hard work to do it or discipline, you just get it done. And that carries over beautifully in both those worlds as well.
How did you describe your rugby career in regards to your own skill set and working on your skill set, but also then really focusing on knowing your role within that team and within the forward pack and within the group as well?
Yeah, look, I was never a very skillful player. I loved playing rugby, and so I was very happy to work hard just to be the fittest, strongest person on the field. And whatever I needed to do, if the coach said you do whatever, I'd go, yep, happy to do it, and just rip in. So for me, my role, I remember Eddie Jones one time when we were in training, Matt Giddo passed me the ball, and Eddie Jones ripped into Matt Giddo saying, "What the hell are you passing a football to a tight head prop? This is ridiculous." Anyway, so me and a couple other players, Dan Vickham being one, Bill Young being another, our role was just to whack people. And I loved that. Like my love of rugby was the physicality, being able to rucks and mauls, tackling, scrums, lineouts. It was not running the ball. I had no desire to run the ball, did not care if I touched the ball or not, but loved being able to whack into people. And so Eddie Jones made it very clear with the 3 or 4 years I played under him, that's all we want you to do. And I loved it. And so that is, I guess, one of the interesting things where I see the game has changed today, where now front rowers are expected to pass the ball, are expected to run a whole lot more. Look, I would have had to learn the skills if I was playing today, but certainly my role back then was just a physical one, which very much I thought was just perfect.
And when did you sort of realise that you were good at rugby and you enjoyed it and potentially you could go to the highest level?
Yeah, look, Look, going to the highest level was a surprise to me. My journey to the highest level was I was playing Waratahs at the time in 2003. The Super Rugby season had finished. I was playing club rugby. I got a call from Eddie Jones because Patricio Noriega was injured from a game, and they said, "Hey, come up to Coffs Harbour. We've got 2 weeks between the tests, and we just need you to be a fill-in, be a body there." We used to call it cannon fodder because, hey, we need people to whack you, tackle you, and you to be a body there to be smashed. And I went, yeah, I'd love to. And so came up anyway. The 4 or 5 days I was up there, Patricio Noriega didn't actually get any better. And I obviously performed well enough for Eddie to say, hey, mate, get your passport sent up because you're on the plane this weekend to play against New Zealand. And that was the last Bledisloe Cup in 2003 before the World Cup. So I wanted to play for the Wallaby, so I never had aspirations for it, but I never saw myself really as, hey, yes, I'm on that pathway. I was a player who didn't play any rep rugby until I played professional rugby. So I was, I played first 15 at school, and I played first Colts in first grade, but I wasn't a player who had been on the traditional playing sort of Aussie under-18s or Aussie schoolboys and then Aussie under-20s and going through. I was just a club rugby player who loved playing and worked my way up the ranks that way.
And then putting the Wallaby jersey on for the first time is an accomplishment in its own right, and you sort of have to kind of pat yourself on the back that you've made it to the highest level, but then you have to run out and play the All Blacks, right? What are you thinking?
Hey, I was so excited. I had so much adrenaline. It was such a buzz. So, so nervous about not making a fool of yourself and a fool of your family and all that kind of stuff. It is such a huge honour to be handed that Wallaby jersey with the Australian crest on it, be given the privilege to sing your national anthem in front of a nation on the field. And so I felt such an honour and privilege to be given the jersey, given the opportunity. And I was like, oh, don't stuff up. Don't be that fool who only plays one test, because they were so bad at their one test. Anyway, I obviously played well enough to be picked then in the World Cup squad and started then the first World Cup game against Argentina. And it all went from there. But look, it is such an amazing thing, and it holds so much weight. And this is not just for rugby, but for any sport. To be able to be given the honour to represent your country, to play in your chosen sport, is a huge honour, and it's one that I'm forever grateful that I was given that opportunity to do so.
How did you alleviate those nerves?
A lot of it was just about focusing on the process. So the training obviously is very intense, but also very specific. So it's like, hey, particularly under Eddie Jones, you know where you're going to go, or where you're supposed to be 5, 6, 7, 8 phases into the play. So it's just know your stuff, follow your stuff, do your processes. So you know your setups, you know the positioning where you need to be on set piece or certain moves and things like that. And it's really drilling into that as opposed to thinking about the crowd or the outcome or the broadcast or anything like that.
Yeah, right. And then in terms of your preparation and then going out and going out there and seeing what happens, I suppose, if you potentially didn't play the best, were you sort of pretty harsh on yourself, or you're okay?
Yeah, look, it was one where, I was probably, and most professional athletes are this, the harshest critic of their own performance. To get to the top level of sport, you need to be very self-aware about how you've performed. You do massive amounts of review, video review on your performances, both in training and in the game. So look, sometimes where you think you've had a good game and coaches think otherwise, that happens and can happen more often than you think. But it is, yes, I was always the harshest critic, and that drives you in a way to then go, right, okay, well, I need to then do whatever I need to do to change it. But look, there's support structures in place in these top teams. You're in a team environment. So if team members see you struggling, or the coaches see you struggling, particularly during a game, then, hey, look, we'll cover you for this. You concentrate on just that, and, hey, we've got the rest of the stuff sorted type thing. So again, that's the difference, I think, between individual sports and team sports, is there is that great ability to rely on your teammates.
And how do you go with feedback?
Yeah, look, again, as a professional athlete, you have to get used to taking feedback. And that was probably one of the biggest changes I saw going from the professional sport world to the corporate world, was that the reduction in constant full and frank feedback. So, like, particularly when you're under a coach like Eddie Jones, but really no different from most other top coaches, is you are given formal feedback once a week after the game, and then after every training session, you generally sit with an assistant coach, either before your next training session or after that training session, getting feedback on how you went. So there is a constant feedback loop, and you've got to get very used to taking feedback so it's not personal. Like, it is about your performance, but hey, this is not about you as a person. You can be a great person but play poorly, and you need to change the way you play. It's not you're a bad person. And so what I found in when going to the corporate world is that a lot of people who haven't been in the sport environment aren't used to receiving the feedback in that way. And so they take any feedback quite personally. And it's something certainly you need to speak differently with your team workers, the people who report to, people you report up to, when giving feedback, because it has to be done far more sensitively if you're not exposed to that environment.
And then when you gave up rugby and you became a professional and architect and you went straight in, what was the sort of the biggest change that you were sort of, I suppose, aware of in regards to the corporate world versus playing for the Wallabies?
Oh, look, the physical one was massive. So I spent my days whacking into people, and so suddenly you go from doing that for 12 years professionally, and even before that I'd played rugby since about 6. So I'd been doing that for every weekend and during the week for 28 years. And then you stop, and there's no tackling people in the corporate world or whacking into your co-workers.
And HR.
Yeah, that's right. So the physical change was a big one. Also, going from look, when you're training, you're training sort of certainly in pre-season, sort of up to 30 hours a week. So it's very physical. You're standing up all the time. And when you're working, and particularly as an architect, which is at times very time intensive, I'd be sitting down for 50 hours, and I'd never sat down 50 hours. So actually, after the first month of me working, my back went, and I went to the physio saying, "This is madness. I'm not scrummaging. I'm not doing anything that usually puts load on my back." And they said, "No, your back's now trying to go from standing position or scrummaging position to seated position. It hasn't had to do that before." And so the physical change was a big one. Look, the other one is definitely also the focus from being part of a high-profile team. You're a relatively, certainly I wasn't a high-profile player, but I had enough of a profile that you'd be noticed. It was, you're asked your opinion on certainly sport and other things, to suddenly going to just one of the many masses catching public transport during the week. So I remember my first winter, catching a bus one dark morning. It was raining. The bus was jam-packed, and I'm sitting there in the bus on the way to work going, "Oh, how different has this been from previously driving to training in my sponsor's car, rocking up to the beautiful training centre where you've got usually a meal ready for you to go and your day planned out, and then you sit at the front end of the plane to go off to a game, which is on broadcast, to, yes, sitting on a crowded bus on a wet, windy day, just thinking, oh." Anyway, so that's those two sides were biggest changes for me.
How did you deal with Al Baxter, the rugby player, people knowing you for that, and then knowing that you're more than just a rugby player? You're actually skilled. You're an architect, and now you're moving forward. You're a parent as well.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. So, look, I was always passionate about architecture, and still am passionate about architecture. So it was good for me. I kept my hand in when I was playing. So I actually had written to my contract that I could do half a day a fortnight. Sounds ridiculously small, but there was written to my contract I could do just a little bit of work constantly through my career. And that meant that I could talk the talk and walk the walk somewhat when I left. And so when I went into meetings, definitely initially people go, "Oh, you're just a BD guy, ex-rugby player." But when you actually start talking with knowledge and talking with some nous about, hey, we're talking architecture here, then it does change. But look, there are certainly still times when I'll turn up to a meeting with a client that is a new client or in a situation where they know me as a rugby player, not an architect, and they go, "Oh, you just must be the BD person. You must be just the figurehead for these guys to walk out in front." So look, I have no problem with that. It's nice that they recognise me or know me first off, but it's something where there definitely are stereotypes you do need to try and get over. But hey, it's actually very minor.
And the most important question of the podcast: what do you look for in a stadium?
Atmosphere. The best stadiums in the world. You go to a stadium for live sport experience, and so you look at some of the favourite stadiums I've ever played: Millennium Stadium, which is now Principality Stadium in Cardiff, Kings Park in Durban, Newlands in Cape Town, Suncorp in Brisbane. All of those, it isn't about how flash the suites are or how amazing the architecture is. It's about they are absolutely extraordinary atmospheres. Like Principality Stadium, Millennium Stadium is when the Welsh start singing, you can feel the noise through your chest. And it's just this wall of people and sound surrounding you, and it is such an amazing atmosphere. It really lifts the adrenaline of the players, and so it is really important for the live sport experience that the atmosphere is everything's done through the stadium designers to maximise that feeling of atmosphere.
Yeah, so the fan engagement, but you've also got iconic stadiums like in the US. You've got Fenway Park, and you've got things like the MCG that have been around for a very, very long time. Like going back, are you fascinated by that they built it such a long time ago, but yet still delivers?
Yeah, definitely. Look, MCG is an extraordinary one. 100,000 people. It's such an iconic coliseum. Fenway Park, another, as you mentioned. SCG, Lords, those. Like SCG is a beautiful stadium, being the pavilion still. So you've got the two historic pavilions, and then I guess the other stands set up as pavilions. So there are these lovely quirks to some of the really old stadiums, which have such fantastic history. And look, it's usually cricket and AFL. Cricket stadiums are a great one in terms of they have been around for so long and developed ad hoc over the years that you get these little quirks where, like Lords isn't a perfect circle. Well, it's not even close. It's more a square, and it's got slopes down one end and things like that. Yeah, and so all that kind of stuff is really lovely for the history of the ground.
How do you sort of, with a thinking of a new stadium, and we've got Brisbane coming up as well, think about legacy, think about quirks, but also think about the modern day, I suppose, how people get in and out, the experience, and looking at things like Optus and whatever. Like, how do you kind of balance them all?
Yeah, look, the big one is that understanding the infrastructure is the backdrop to the event. So everything you can do to maximise how the spectators, how the fans engage with the event is paramount. So atmosphere we spoke about, sight lines, everything like that. The event has got to be able to operate easily. So obviously it's got to be the right size, and the field's got to do all the things it needs to do, loading, unloading. But it's also removing all the pain points for spectators. So if you've had to wait in line for half an hour through security, and then you get in, you can't find your seat, and then you try and go to the loo and can't get to the loo for a long time, and then if all these things are just a pain in the ass before the event starts, the event has to work so hard for then you'd have a good experience, because you're sitting there going, "Oh, I'm so sick of this because I've had wait in line everywhere and I couldn't get my beer, or it was too expensive," or whatever it was. And so by removing all those pain points, it's so much easier for people to be engaged positively with the event. So it's about making sure the event is the first and foremost, and then designing for the people so the people don't are in a great mood and have got access to all the things they need getting to that event. Now, look, there's a whole lot of other stuff in terms of if you want people to come back, there's diversity of experience, there's ease of use. It's certainly we're seeing a whole lot more different offerings, corporate offerings in stadiums now. The difference between 30 years ago now for anything, the hospitality experience in a restaurant, the retail experience in a shopping mall was fundamentally different. And so those things, as society expects more, as society wants to see more and more diverse experiences, that's what's happening with stadiums as well. So that's a big one. And look, the other massive one with stadiums is they are big bits of very expensive infrastructure. So they need to work hard in between events to be relevant. So Combank Stadium's a great one, the one at Parramatta. they have events pretty much every day of the year. I think it was speaking to the operators, Venues New South Wales, and they said they have 80,000 people a year come through their doors outside of their event days, which is just brilliant. So it means that it actually gets to be used 7 days a week and is not just sitting idle for 80% of the year.
And Al, you talked on game day experience. I'm curious to know around like the architectural side, and you build this a stadium, and everyone goes, "Wow, this is an amazing stadium." But then you might have overpriced cold chips, or the toilet might not work, or something. And like the feedback that they get, probably nothing to do with the design. But then, how do you kind of counteract that when you are designing things?
Look, it very much is when you are designing things, it's trying to work with the future operator to say, hey, what's the experience? Because they don't want to give the fans cold chips, but things happen where it does. So it's working with them to say, hey, operator, what is the kind of experience you would love your fans, your customers to have when they come here? Great. Well, how can we make it so the chips get cooked in at the right time and then the customers don't have to wait forever so they can get hot chips? But look, some of that is just out of control. And that's, I know, I sat on the board of the Waratahs for a long time after playing rugby, and usually the biggest complaint that came through midweek was, hey, beer was too expensive or warm or the pies were cold or, hey, it got rained on. And they're things totally outside of the control in many cases of the team, but things that really impact negatively. So again, it's making sure hopefully as designers you can facilitate those operations as best you can during the design phase so it doesn't negatively impact.
And we're going through a bit of a cost of living crisis where live sport tickets go up, etc. But then we go look at the Ashes and the pre-sale tickets in terms of cricket and Test cricket coming with big flagship events. What's your view on live sport, broadly speaking? Because we've seen some swings where some sports are now declining a little bit, but the big ones like the State of Origin and the Lions recently and AFL, etc., continue to be strong in the Ashes.
Yeah, look, I think those items, again, it's diversity of games and what they stand for. So Lions, the Ashes, grand final is really a bucket list item. So the Lions tickets, when they went on public sale, sold out in 4 hours to all the tests. So huge demand. There was 250,000 tickets or something that went on sale and they got snapped up almost instantaneously. That's a bucket list thing. Once every 12 years, people go, I really want to go there. So people are happy to pay for that. And it was shown they did pay for that and it was sellout crowds. Likewise, Ashes. Hey, I'd love to see, the Ashes in Melbourne on Boxing Day is one of those bucket list items. And so I think for those, as long as people see value, so hey, it's got to be two great teams in an iconic series where it's a genuine toss-up about who's going to win. And I think the English are playing quite well in the Ashes at the moment. So again, it's great. Let's see this because I think it's a genuine contest. I think the problem comes is when you've got your average club seat or something like that, and if they start getting expensive, then it starts like, hey, this is not a bucket list item. This is, and so that's when you make the decision. Hey, this is as a cost of living expense. You know what? I can watch it on free to air TV. So I'm not gonna go there. So that I think for the non-bucket list games, non-major events, it's really important to have again those diversity of experiences. So you can say, hey, if you just want a general admission ticket up in the grandstands, no fuss, and it's cheap and easy to get for you and your family, then there should be that option. But hey, look, if you want to have a corporate ticket and have a fantastic hospitality experience, then great, there's that option as well. So hopefully it's operators recognising that and being able to provide that. So there is a bit of relief for those who can't afford to pay.
You mentioned about free-to-air and the streaming services. Does that come into consideration when you're thinking about the stadium at all?
Yeah, definitely. You need to provide an experience which is going to be better than what you can get at home on TV. And look, you look at, I think about the most access anyone gets is the State of Origin. Look, and there's cricket does fantastic stuff as well with the BBL, where you mic up players on the field and things like that. So there is, you do sit there as stadium designers going, how do we compete against the broadcast where they're speaking to coaches, they're speaking to players at halftime, they're seeing views of the warm-up inside the change rooms. Like that is tough to compete against. But it comes back to, hey, when you're sitting at home on your couch, you don't get that extraordinary buzz of the crowd when the team first runs on. You don't get the roar of crowd in your ears when there's a try or something great happens. And so how do you maximise that live sport experience, which is atmosphere, which is proximity to the players, which is the feeling of a single crowd experience and a positive crowd experience that you just can't get in small numbers when you're at the pub or at home.
And then on the demographic side, every sport has a different demographic, I would imagine, in terms of families versus other corporates, etc. Again, planning a stadium, how do you kind of think about all that?
Yeah, it's huge. It's the swings between toilets are massive. You look at a Taylor Swift concert versus a men's State of Origin game. The difference in male and female fans who come there, spectators come there, is huge. And so one will be serving totally different food and beverage. We'll have, so let's say Taylor Swift, it's going to be a whole lot of underage girls and their parents who come there. So it's totally different consideration to like a Guns N' Roses concert or a State of Origin rugby league match where it's usually male heavy and a heavy drinking crowd. So you have to try and give enough flexibility to the operators so they are able to do those things. They can bring in different food and beverage options. They can swing toilets between male and female. They can provide different secure locations for those who are not drinking. They can all that kind of stuff. And so it gets complicated. But that's one of the fun parts of the stadium design is where you do get those complicated briefs and where you find solutions for that. It's massively satisfying.
And in regards to a long-term trend around live sport and sport itself, what's one of the? Mental health. We talk about that in regards to sport. Can you talk about your view on sport long-term in Australia and how it should be seen?
Yeah, look, what has been extraordinary in all levels of sport, probably globally, is the identification that health and wellness is critically important. Look, one of my closest friends at rugby, Dan Vickman, suicided, and that was such a dreadful, dreadful moment. And that he found that change from professional sport to life really tough. And so that is something that is now being recognised by sports. The Australian Sports Commission, the AIS, recognises the mental health and wellness of its athletes are critical. You can't have podium success and then someone fall apart mentally, because they usually fall apart physically, and their life be awful after that. So I think that rightfully has been now a bigger focus of a duty of care of both professional and elite sports. Look, I think in some cases it can still be done. I think one of the things that I find really upsetting is some of the racism you still see in crowds and in sport. And I think sports are rightly coming down that really hard now. And so I think that's great. But there's still more sports can do. I think the transition from professional athlete to just an everyday person is a really tough one, particularly if you've been there for a long while. You get institutionalised. So when you're doing professional sport, you are told what to wear, where to go, what to eat for every minute of your day, pretty much the whole year. Like, we got 6 weeks off rugby a year, and on the other 46 weeks, we were told exactly where to go, what to do, what to wear. And what to eat, who to see, even messaging on what you say to the media, all that kind of stuff. And when that stops, and suddenly, let's say I was a professional rugby player for 12 years, suddenly that stops, and you're going, I don't have a diary telling me what to do or what I should wear or what I should be saying to people today. It's a big shift. And so rugby's recognised that. I think AFL and Rugby League both recognise that, and now have better support systems to try and enable that transition to be an easier one.
And also, we live in the age of social media too. And in my previous podcast, I've had 2 basketball guests that have been abused online and their family abused by losing the people losing sports bets, which is something which I was like, whoa, I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, that's such a tough one. Look, I came up through professional sport when there was some social media, Facebook and the internet, but there wasn't.
You were building the MySpace generation, eh?
Yeah, that's right. So, well, look, mobile phones, what was the Apple iPhone came in 2007. So the back end of my career had some iPhones, but there wasn't the social media that it is today. And that's where it is really tough on the players today when pretty much everything you do on and off the field is under the being broadcast or being recorded, whether you like it or not, whether you consent to it or not. And then, some abuse. And I think that's, look, one of the things with that can be improved, not just racism, there's also sexism. I know there's a huge issue in women's professional sport about stalking, about trolling, all that kind of stuff. And so that is something I don't know the answers of how that is resolved. Hopefully it's with the service providers of the social media sites and things like that. They can do a role, the clubs can do a role, the social roles, all that kind of stuff. But that is such a different world, which is so tough for these athletes. Look, it's a double-edged sword. They get broadcast and sponsorship agreements because they are on social media, but there's the dark side to it as well.
Al, I'm going to talk about you now for a second to finish off. I'm curious to know what makes you or made you a high performer in sport and now a high performer in business. Is there some sort of traits that, you talked about them early on, but is there something else that you can share with the listeners about how you see your life now?
Oh, look, I was naturally competitive, so wanted to win most things, so that always helps. Again, that can go both ways. My younger brother he rode for Australia for 8 years, so and he was always the same height or taller than me. So although he's a couple of years younger, he's 6'6" and was sort of the same height all the way through. So physically, we used to compete against each other pretty much from the age of about 6. So that I think helped us both get to the top of our sports and sort of hone that competitiveness in both of us. And then, look, I think
just on that story, were you trying to outprove each other?
Yeah, so one of us would go for a run, get a time, go, well, I can do more than that, or someone do
there was a bit of that.
Like that. So, yeah,
I wear the Wallaby jersey now. They're like, well, I'm represented the country in cycling.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just World Championships, and here's my World Championship top. But no, look, it was one of earlier days competitiveness. I think when his rowing career started taking off and he started making like the Aussie underage teams and likewise when my rugby career started getting up, it was more one of support. We understood what each other was going through. And so, the competitiveness was then sort of, I guess, already inbuilt with us, with teammates and other things. But yeah, it was great actually having a brother going through that same elite sport pathway at the same time, because it was, there was someone who understood all the ups and downs of professional elite sport. Look, that's definitely one. And then, look, in terms of where I'm as a person, I figure if you're going to do something, you may as well try and do it to your best of your ability. Hey, if you're here in the world for not a hugely long time, and so, hey, if you're going to do it, you may as well dive in and give it a real go and do things you enjoy. So certainly I loved rugby, and so I did that to the best of my ability, and I love architecture and hope I'm doing that to the best of my ability, and likewise with family and friends, like hope to dive in and have the best friendships with family and friends when I can.
Yep. So we've got the competitiveness, we've got the enjoying and having fun and diving in. We also had the teamwork as well. What were the other two? I can't remember.
It was discipline and hard work. Yeah. So look, it's the willing to make sacrifices for doing what you love. And so I know when I was coming up through university, and my sort of rugby was getting more serious, it was a difference between saying, oh, look, I can go for a beer on Wednesday night with my university mates, but I know I've got an early training session tomorrow, and if I want to make the team and I turn up hungover there, I'm probably not going to make the team. So what do I want to do? Do I want to play in this team, or do I want to go out with the mates on a Wednesday night? And that's a choice you've got to make. And either one is valid, but you then can't be upset if you don't make the team about, oh, well, I didn't make the team. It's like, well, did you turn up on that Thursday morning in the best condition you could?
Give yourself every best shot. Now you have to subscribe to one streaming service, Netflix or Spotify. Which one?
Look, probably Netflix. I do love a movie, and there's some awesome Netflix series, particularly sports ones. So on
the sports side, the 8 block high action dramas, White Lotus style.
My wife very much likes the White Lotus and other things, but I don't mind a decent series, but I love the sports ones.
Watching cricket or watching tennis?
Cricket for sure.
Yeah, big
Yeah.
batch or test.
I love the test in the summer. There is nothing better than being down at the beach in the morning and then in the afternoon turning on the cricket and just having a long, lazy lunch with a quiet beer watching Test match cricket.
That leads me to my next question: a long lunch with friends or a long run with friends?
Oh, lunch for sure.
Yeah, and any favourite restaurants that you want to shout out to?
Look, there's a local pizza place that just opened near us, which is very good. But no, look, I feel bad giving anyone a plug. No, it's anything I can walk to, so I don't have to drive
there
anywhere.
you go.
Yeah.
The local anything at all.
Yeah.
Now, your scoreboard moment, which is a moment in your life which
Yeah.
is very vivid. It could have been yesterday, but it feels like yesterday sometimes. In regards to from that moment on, things changed.
Yeah, look, for me, it was actually playing rugby in year 12. I'd always played rugby at school, but sort of our school had two options, rugby and soccer, and I was definitely not built for soccer. So I was the short, fat kid, so the front row was definitely suited me. But in year 12, I played, a great first 15 team. It didn't win the tournament, but it just had great camaraderie, great friendships. Really nice coaches, and it was a game actually against another school, Kings. Sterling Mortlock was playing against him. We had the win, and I sat there after the game. I scored a try as well, which was one of the only tries I scored that year. But I sat there and went, you know what? I've had such fun this season, such fun this game. This is the kind of thing I want to keep doing. And it wasn't about, hey, I want to do it for Australia. It's just I want to keep playing rugby after school. I want to keep having this as part of my life because it became a passion at that point, and that really changed me from just playing because I had to playing because I loved playing it.
There's so many moments around school level that people can remember, whether it's early primary school or high school, but teams and representation that sort of defined where you're at now. Thank you for sharing that moment. Now, your all-time favourite sporting moment, and I'm going to ask it doesn't include yourself today.
No. Well, look, it actually is the America's Cup win. I remember it vividly.
I think Trevor Hendy's was that. Yeah.
There you go. Hey, well, that Trevor Hendy, similar vintage, I guess. So it's all it was such a buzz to see. Like, this was the first time the Americans had lost it. It had been won by Australians. It was such a comeback story. It was such a great underdog story with the wing keel, all that kind of stuff behind it. And it was the first time I'd felt a whole country getting behind a team and celebrating success. Like the Prime Minister included, Bob Hawke getting up there and saying anyone's a mug, any boss is a mug who sacks the guys for not turning up. Yeah.
There you go. And now, as part of our sponsorship with Scoreboard, we've got a sponsor in Brisbane, a company called Swyftx. They're Australia's most trusted crypto platform. They've got over 1.1 million users in Australia and New Zealand. As part of their sponsorship, we also power a segment called the Bucket List. And the Bucket List is a sporting event that you haven't attended just yet that's in line with their new phrase, where can crypto take you? So, Al Baxter, I'm curious to know what your sporting bucket list is.
Yeah, look, I've done a lot of amazing sporting. I've been lucky enough to do a lot of amazing sporting events around the world, the Super Bowls, the FIFA World Cup games, all that kind of stuff. But look, I think one I haven't done is F1 at Monaco. Just the
That's
glitz.
the third time. We've got the third
really?
F1 at Monaco.
Okay.
Now, the question that I ask you on that is whether you arrive in your private jet or your private yacht.
Oh, private yacht for sure. I love swimming and surfing, so being able to dive off the back of your private yacht as you pull it up to the edge of the track would be all time.
There you go. The Monaco GP has popped up, so maybe crypto can take you to the Monaco GP. Now, I've got two final questions.
Yeah.
One is, they're correlated, but one is some advice to maybe a 15-year-old that wants to play professional sport, and now you're going through it with your kids as well, but some advice now living in 2025.
Yeah, look, follow your passion. It takes huge amounts of sacrifice to get into professional sport, and it hurts. You spend a lot of time injured. It's tough, and so if you're passionate about it, then you are willing to make sacrifices and do the hard work. But look, if you're passionate about it, then work with your coaches, ask what you need to do to get better, and then do it. And it's as simple as that. It sounds oversimplified, but it is. If you've got coaches who you trust and others who you think who can guide you in that sport, just take their advice and follow through with it.
And then we've talked a lot on Scoreboard about parental behaviour. Some advice as a parent, watching your kids play and supporting your kids through. Now that you've also got the child playing at the elite level in terms of the best that they could possibly do.
Yeah, look, in most cases, it's just take a chill pill type thing. It is. Hey, the particularly kids sport. It's not the World Cup final. It's not if they win or lose. Even if it's a club final, hey, it is just kids sport, and so what's important is to support your child, support your team, to understand that it's there's enjoyment, but it's also, hey, it's about teamwork, discipline. It's about things which are great with team sport. And if you are doing the sport you like doing, and if the kid is doing it in a way which is following the coach and with his teammates and all that's going well, if they win or lose, it doesn't matter. Look, it will for the child, and it might for the parents, but hey, it's actually all about just being supportive of the child being in the sport, as opposed to driving them from the sidelines about winning or losing.
Yeah, that's some good advice. I'm curious to know, just on the back of that, when your child does have a bad game and you potentially think they may have had a bad game because you've seen lots of them, what do you do after the game?
Yeah, look, a lot is about saying, hey, look, the lucky thing in sport is most often you get to come back the next week and redeem yourself. So a lot is about, hey, speak to the coaches. I try not to give advice if they don't ask for it. So if they say, hey, Dad, I know in this scrum or line out or whatever, what would have you done? Then I'm happy to give that advice. But it's very much listening to their coaches and saying, hey, look, sit down with coaches this week, understand where you can improve the play, and then implement it, because next week you get the chance to redeem yourself.
Al Baxter, thank you so much for joining Scoreboard, the podcast today, to have a chat about your life on and off the field, particularly still involved with sport and watching rugby and sport in general. I really do appreciate it, and congratulations on everything that you've achieved as a Wallaby, but then also now as a father as well. I wish you all the best and look forward to following the progress and the stadiums that pop up through Populous.
Many thanks, Chris. It was a pleasure.